Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine on ESPN Radio 1230. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
We have on today is because one of my favorite things in life is to meet people who don't necessarily fit like stereotypes, all right? And the thing is, I pointed this out to you last week after we were done. You are an attorney, a high school teacher, and a girls' basketball coach, all right? And I'm sure there have been many times in your life where somebody said, you're an attorney, because they knew you as a basketball coach. Or maybe they knew you from law school and they didn't know what you did now, and they're like, you coach girls' basketball?
True.
And I always kind of like that thing. So we have Casey Page with us, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to enlighten some of Casey Page's followers who know him as an artist, because what they don't know is that he was a heck of a high school athlete. Probably.
I definitely tried.
Yeah, well.
I did try.
Well, I mean, so for instance, I think you made it to the state tournament and shot and discus.
Shot and discus.
Your senior year. I think you went discus your junior year. Did you go your sophomore year as well?
I don't believe I did my sophomore year.
Okay. No. Now, I got some questions about the guys who ended up beating you your senior year, because I think they were doing drugs. Because Casey, I think you were like right behind the guy who was considered to be the front runner, like your senior year in both of those events. And some dude from some county out east, like up and threw an extra 9 feet or whatever from his season high.
I don't know if it was just luck for all of us, really. Because especially my senior year at state, it was pure luck for the discus. I had never thrown it as far as I did to get there.
Yeah.
So.
Now, you won the region both that year, right, in both those events?
Yep, I did.
And then you were now football coaches. Now they probably like hounded you day in and day out, because you did play some football.
I did.
You were a good lineman.
Yeah.
You were a good lineman. I'm sure they had stars in their eyes for what you wanted to do. But I always took it, even when you were in high school, football was just not your thing.
It's one of those things where, because I am the size that I am, it's what I'm supposed to do, you know.
And you were in Glasgow, so there were no getting away from it.
Right. My heart wasn't in it like everyone else's, was for me. But I did love the shot and discus. Football was fun. I was with my friends. Yeah. And the coaches were great. Mm-hmm. Eubank and all those guys, they were great.
Yeah. Peach was your line coach, wasn't he?
It was Nance.
Yeah, Coach Nance. You didn't know they called him Peach?
No, I never heard Peach. I'm gonna yell at him next time I see him walking.
Yeah, see him walking? Oh, yeah. And you'll have to stop and ask him why they called him Peach.
Right.
Because based on seeing Coach Nance now, you would never guess why anybody would call him Peach.
I think it's crazy how good he looks still. It's like he's not aging at all.
Right. Yeah, I guess walking does that for you.
Yeah, it does help.
Those are good guys he just mentioned. There's not a better guy in the world than Coach Eubank.
Coach Southall.
Yeah.
Oh,
love Coach Southall.
Yeah, good guys.
Yeah, you had a good group of guys there with you. Now this is mid-aughts. What year did you graduate high school?
05.
So yeah, mid-aughts when you were doing this. And then I guess we talked about the fact that football was not the thing in your heart.
Yeah.
But I guess some form of art always was.
Yeah, from the start, it's my dad. He always drew and things like that, and just messed around the house, just to kind of entertain me, kind of show me something that I could be doing, because I'm my mother's only child,
Yeah.
So I was always just terrorizing them, and so he's like threw a pencil in my hand, but I had done that my whole life, and they really supported it a lot. My teachers noticed pretty early on that there was something there as far as my ability to be an artist, to draw.
Yeah. Now, so when you were doing the art classes, I'm going to guess Miss Goodson was your art teacher.
She was my freshman year art teacher.
And then, so what like when you got into art, what was the thing about art that inspired you? I mean, you mentioned your dad putting a pencil, but a lot of people do things that their parents ask them to do when they're younger, but, as they grow older, it's not.
Well, the thing was, they made it fun. While they're doing it, they made it fun. And whenever I would draw something, they let me know that it was good, it was okay. I was on the right track. And for that, I guess, made me interested. Just naturally made me want to do it, because I could see my parents were happy with what I was doing. So, but I don't know. something about it does come natural. Even today, I amaze myself. People are like, how do you do this? I ask myself the same question. When I finish a painting, I sit back and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I could never do it again. I try not to chase my last piece, but I'll never be able to get it back. I couldn't paint that same painting again.
Now, one of them that stood out to me, and what is your Instagram account? Tell people that so they can look it up.
Okay, it's a little weird. It's _Casey Paints _
Okay, underscore on each end. Casey
Right,
Paints
right.
in the middle.
Or you can just search the hashtag Casey Paints.
Yeah.
That's probably the easiest way.
Now, the one that stands out to me, you had a photograph of a key on a glass top table.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then you had the painting. And I show people this one. I've not shown John. I'll show John when we get done here. But I've shown people this painting, and I show them both of them, right? And they'll go, wait, which one's the photo?
I'm telling you, I amaze myself. Because, I mean, there was never any real training besides just freshman year art. Yeah. And even then, we didn't paint. I don't know. It just clicks. People ask me all the time, and I try not to sound, like a jerk about it, but it clicks.
Yeah.
Do you visualize it in your mind what you want to do? Is that?
Well, I do have to see it. I got to see it in front of me. I do go from a photo,
Okay,
or just something sitting in front of me. I do need to see it. If I wasn't able to look at it, it would come out more expressive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Well, and I think I've seen you talk about your art as being realistic.
Yeah.
But one of the things I always like, even the key painting, there's like these strokes in there, all right, that they're not in that photo.
Right.
I don't know if that's like you just saw them as you're painting and say, hey, I think they're basically like red line strokes.
It's a combination, and this is, there's so much I could say about that. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Go.
Part of it is having no clue what I'm doing. That's part of it.
that's how this show goes.
Yeah, but you're the perfect show.
Of course, I have to push myself to the end, because when I start on any painting, it just does not look good. I have to chisel it out, and I have to keep working and keep working. So many paintings I've almost given up on until I put the last details on it that it actually looks like anything.
Yeah.
And a big part of it is not knowing what I'm going to do. Knowing that there is something there that I'm not seeing, and I have to keep working at it. So I force myself through it, because I don't have patience. That's that's a big misconception with painters. Everybody thinks we're just happy trees. I'm not patient at all, but I get through it. It's part of the reason why I would never tell an artist to go to art school, is because they're teaching you what somebody else kind of struggled through themselves. They're teaching you the theory of these master painters who weren't perfect themselves. It's Monet, one of the biggest names I feel like, of course, I had read once that he was may have been partially blind. That's why he had his style.
Yeah.
That's why it's real fuzzy, that impressionist.
Yeah, he couldn't see at a distance.
Right. And but he didn't go to school for that. It was trial and error for him, and the same way with me. And the end product is a realistic image, but all the way through it, it's just chaos. And how am I going to get here? How do I do this? How do I do that? But just knowing light and dark and getting those colors correct, it comes out. And that's just, for anybody who works through it, you're going to find that. And it's just my build. I'm such a big guy, I beat up. Of course, I don't paint on a canvas. I paint on wood, because I can smash it.
Yeah.
My brushes, they hate me. I go through brushes, but I tear them up. And that's part of it. My strokes are kind of rough, and that's just the frustration. And it goes back to the lack of patience, because I try to speed through certain parts, and sometimes I do it on purpose. I want to do things fast to get a certain look for a minute, and then I'll slow down and do other things. So.
As a sidebar question, and I'm going to come back to the training, not training discussion. Do you like those guys that like do the speed painting on stage? You like that kind of thing? No, because you're talking about not having patience, but that feels like, is that a shtick? Is that what that is? You think?
Well, hooray for them for being able, for finding something and being able to do that. And I think it's awesome. Like if you're on vacation to see something, like it's entertaining.
Yeah.
The fact that they can just crank them out so quick, that's the part that I don't enjoy so much about it, because they could make twice as much money as I can getting. That's my frustration with it.
Yeah, because
what I do takes time.
Yeah, because it's kind of going back to if you are a form writer, right? So you have a formulaic writer, and you write the same formula over and over and over. You might change character's name. Heck, you might not even bother with that. You know what I mean? But you can churn out a novel every 3 months, kind of thing. That's, to me, that's fine, and sometimes I like that kind of stuff. But after you've read 2 or 3 of them, you're like, well, I don't need to read any more of these.
Right.
Which is kind of, to me, like those guys who, those folks who like do the speed painting on stage. I'm impressed by the fact that they can do that, but I do wonder about the actual total creativity of something of that nature.
Well, there's a certain amount of, it's definitely on the fly, and anything can happen. You do have those aspects of it. And again, there was a certain amount of trial and error to get to the point of being able to do it so quick.
Yeah.
I don't know. It bugs me that they can do it so fast. It looks so good. And it's like,
so back to this training versus kind of natural thing. And John and I have kind of discussed this when it comes to like a sport like basketball or soccer. It's good to learn the fundamentals, but the best players you usually see are creative players, which means
you can get tied up, just like hitting a baseball or whatever. You can get tied up too much in thinking about how to do it rather than see it and hit it.
Right.
And I would think same way with creating a piece in art or whatever. You don't want to get too technical that you lose your creativity.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah. Now, so
I see it with my own son.
Is that right?
Well, with baseball, of course, he's playing baseball, and when we're at home, I'll toss it to him. He'll hit it all day. Lots of confidence. He's running around, chest feathers out. He can do it.
Yeah.
He gets on the field, game day, and he's striking out. He's missing some balls. It's because he's got the first base coach, the third base coach.
Yeah, too much information coming in.
It's coming in.
Yeah.
So I try to tell him, and it's not being disrespectful to the coaches. It's just like, you know what you have to do. We do it at home all the time. When you get up there, just do it.
Yep, clear mind.
Yep, that's it. Clear
that's
mind.
what I always said.
Yep.
They're going to be yelling at you. They're going to be yelling at you. But until you hit that ball and get to first base, don't worry about what nobody's saying.
Yeah. Going back to my background was my focus was creative writing in college, wasn't journalism in any way. As a matter of fact, I was avoiding that at all costs is what I thought I was doing.
Right.
And then my minor was in history. So, but the thing was, so you go through creative writing, and I went that way because, I thought being a writer meant you had to learn how to be a writer, not realizing that either you are or you aren't.
Right.
That came later after I got out of school and realized either you're right or you don't.
Right.
And so, but my least favorite, you go through these poetry classes, I couldn't stand Robert Frost.
You don't like Robert Frost?
Robert Frost has the phrase playing tennis with the net down, and what he's talking about is all poetry should have some sort of rhythm and rhyme and that kind of thing, and that's all well and good, but I just wasn't that interested in that kind of thing. I kind of like the idea of you do have to know the rules before you break the rules, but I also think that sometimes the rules restrict your creativity a little bit. And so what I liked was Robert Creeley. He was a postmodernist poet, Black Mountain School of Poetry, along with Charles Olson, Robert Duncan, Robert Bly. I think they were in that too. And he knew the rules. He knew the rhythms and the rhymes and that kind of stuff. But what he did is he kind of mixed it into the poem, so the line breaks were abnormal and that kind of thing. And I just kind of always liked that, as opposed to this strict idea that Robert Frost has that, you got to write poetry a certain way. And that being the case, I've kind of always been interested in, learning about painting, as you're talking about, learning about poetry and that kind of thing. But just because you know enough about it so that you can do it, but you don't want the rules and the restrictions to apprehend your creativity and make it to where you focus too much on the rules and things of that kind of nature. John?
Work and then sell it, or do people like call you and go, I would like to have this piece, and then you do that?
Right. Well, of course, I'm still in the early stages of my art, and I'm doing a little bit of everything. I'm
Okay.
still finding that formula that's really, really working. I do a lot of commissions. People ask me constantly to paint for them, and I definitely don't want to turn them down because I want everybody to have my artwork. But as I grow, I'm trying to keep it as cheap as I can. But with artwork, I mean, it just gets expensive because I have other people that, you know, they got to get paid as well. So, and I have to tack that on. But,
And it takes time.
And it takes time. People don't realize. Some people think that I'm a printer. They order it today. They have it in hand tomorrow. It's just not how it works.
Yeah.
I do try to give a schedule, a timeline, something realistic for me. That way, you know, there's no questions up until that date. Now, I have stores and galleries and things. They want certain things. And we work together because I want to stay true to myself and my art, but I also want to give them something that they can sell. So.
Now, right now, you have a show, I think, till July 6th at the Downing Museum over in Bowling Green.
Museum, yeah.
Now, I guess everything that's there is basically for sale. I mean, you don't do it unless it's going to be for sale, huh?
Unless it's a piece that I plan to keep myself, which isn't many because I don't really hang my own artwork in my house.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's weird about me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I look back on anything I've ever written, and I mostly can't stand it.
You can't stand it.
No.
We're our worst critics, you know.
Yeah.
But
because you see all the things you didn't do,
every
or
single
you're
brush stroke. I see every single brush stroke and how terrible they all are.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing to try to be any kind of real creative person like that, John. I don't know if you have any creative pursuits of that nature, but I'm sure there are basketball games that you look back on through the years and you're like, "Dadgummit, I should have done that differently."
Yeah, I don't watch old films.
Right,
I didn't
yeah.
like it, when I was, coaching, during all that time. I hated watching our team play.
Right.
I mean, I just didn't. I didn't like doing that. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I wanted to do it and move on.
Right.
It's an art too.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
sports. It's the ballet.
Yeah, that's right. But you've got that going on. What other things do you have going on? Like, do you have any shows coming up? That kind of stuff.
I'm working on a lot of top secret stuff.
You tell us, but you have to kill us on.
Well, not necessarily. I can tell you one big thing that I'm trying to do, but I have to figure out a lot of things about it. Pauline Tabor. Mm-hmm. You heard the name?
Yes.
I think the area needs a good story about her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see. I mean, just the fact that she was such a strong businesswoman in a time where that was just completely taboo.
Yeah.
I mean, 1930s on up to the 60s. She was well respected for what she did and left alone.
Now, what did she do?
She owned the brothel.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
But that's one thing.
Which is the building's no longer there, right?
No, I don't believe it is.
It was over there. Down Roseville Road a little bit. Is that where that was?
I believe so. Yeah. Well, I don't know the name of any roads.
Yeah.
It's right off campus. Is that not?
No, never
correct?
mind. Wrong one.
Are you sure? Wrong one. That's a different one. Hilarious.
Yeah. I was told a story one time about when Glasgow had a house of ill repute, and this was in the probably late 40s or whatever, and there was a death at the house of ill repute, and the newspaper didn't want to touch the story.
Really?
Yeah.
We might need to talk about that. I want to do. Of course, I have my Americana series that I do.
Yeah.
Where it's just touching on different things that are truly American throughout history of America. And I just kind of want this to be a branch of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely local. I feel like we need something interesting going on.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, one thing you're not mentioning is that you've got a building down here. You're looking at doing a studio in that building.
The old, what was it, the Borders Monument Company?
And some people may know it. Randy Depp, I think, had a car detail shop there for a little while.
Yeah, he detailed some cars for a short time.
Yeah. So
I'm
that's
actually
something.
going there after this. We got to get some work done.
And so, I mean, you talking about things locally. I mean, that's part of what you're attempting to accomplish as well, is just reinvestment, art related, I guess, within Glasgow, especially in the downtown area.
Right. I don't know. It's tough. When it comes to Glasgow, it's a lot of strictly business going on.
Yeah.
And it's not bad because Glasgow is a great place. It's a peaceful place, and that's great. And I think that may be part of it. It's the fact that it is so peaceful, the thought of letting young folk get away with some stuff is kind of a scary thought, because it can be scary. But I feel like we need to liven it up a little bit. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I myself, when I was a kid, anytime I did get out in the town and actually had some fun, I never really was trying to get into any trouble, you know?
Yeah.
I see we let these kids kind of run with it.
Yeah. Well, it's good. And also, I mean, one of the discussions I often have with people is, how do we get our people to move back to Glasgow? And I'm like, well, they got to feel like there's reason to live here and that they're wanted. Yeah. And you fit in that category. I think we had Carson Inman on the other day. She and Nick England opened the Urban Den that's just off the square.
Right. We want to get by there.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's good. That's a couple of young kids coming back.
The event, like yesterday.
Yeah.
We came up. We were only here for 10 minutes, and it came just the worst wind.
Yeah.
But stuff like that was great.
Yeah. So there's lots of good things going on, and good that you're engaged in that. Casey, I really want to thank you for coming by and talking to us. This
Glad
is
to be here.
It's a little off from what we usually do, but it's the dead period for high school sports, so it's a great time to have different folks on to talk about different things. Anything, John?
No, this is I admire anybody that tries to pursue what they like to do.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to be good at anything. And that's kind of why I went away from being an attorney to teaching and coaching. That's what I always wanted to do.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, Casey, thank you for joining us. It's the Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. John, we're back. I'm going to get something right here on this board before this day's over with. But anyway, UConn, as we previously just alluded to, has decided to move back to the Big East. They are a football school, and they had made the move years ago, the Big East kind of broke apart. It was initially a basketball conference formed in 1979, focused around I think they were all private colleges in the Northeast that played basketball, and they had some good basketball in that conference. And then in the early 90s, they started letting football-focused schools into the conference, and by the mid-2000s, there was a feud between the football schools and the basketball-centric schools, and the conference basically ended up breaking apart. And even by then, some of the universities like Louisville and some of the others,
Louisville, Syracuse, Boston College,
had moved to the ACC to play basketball, and because of football, it kind of took care of both interest for them. And so the Big East was kind of left with a dilemma. They were left with some not so great playing football schools, but they still had some pretty good basketball schools in the conference, and they ended up becoming the Big East and the American Association or something like that, which was basically the football schools went to the American and the basketball schools went to the Big East.
And it was mainly city Catholic schools for the most part.
Yeah, things like St. John's, Providence,
Villanova, Xavier.
Yep.
I mean, it's a really good conference.
It is.
Oh, it's a great basketball conference, even after they split up.
Yes.
I mean, Villanova's won the national title twice since the split up. But back in the day with Syracuse and St. John's and Georgetown, just tremendous basketball.
Yeah.
And football was, that movement in the 2000s where everybody had to have a super football program is what caused all this realignment for years and years and years. And I think schools have finally figured out that that has not always been the best move. And I think UConn is a classic example of that.
Yeah, so they're moving back to the Big East. I think they'll start playing in 2021. But I'm curious as to, I've not seen any reporting on what their direction is on football.
They're going independent.
Yeah, so
just like Notre Dame's independent, BYU's independent, Army's independent.
Yeah.
A couple of UMass is independent.
Yeah.
They're just going to go independent and probably will play each other and pick up a lot of checks playing some other schools.
Well, I mean, I guess does this feel like that they've kind of thrown in the towel on the idea of being a powerful football program, or they've just okay, our
not
basketball's our bread and butter?
I wouldn't say that, because if they were throwing in their towel, they would drop down to the lower levels of football.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do that, but I think it's a great move for them.
Yeah.
I think it is by far And if you're not in a Power 5 conference in football, you've got no chance.
Yeah, right.
And all you're doing oftentimes in these non-Power 5 conferences is you're putting your other sports in a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these conferences, the original deal with conferences, it was regional. You even for your fan base, you could drive to away games.
Yeah.
And you could drive your teams. UConn was playing in Tulsa. They were playing in Houston. They were playing.
Yeah.
They were playing in Florida. They had so many non-natural rivals, and it was costing them millions of dollars a year in travel expenses, not just for football, but baseball and everything else. And I think they finally figured out that just didn't make sense because they got to one decent bowl game as a football program, but last year. They were probably the worst football program in the country last year.
Yeah.
They were 1-11. They were dead last in defense, and they were not even competitive. And I think they finally kind of realized their bread and butter, and their men's basketball has tremendously suffered. And people know UConn by their women's basketball and their men's basketball.
Right.
Their women's basketball has never lost a game in conference play in the American Conference, so they were getting nothing out of it. The men's conference, the men has lost all that luster, so they wanted to go back and get back to their roots, and their roots is basically playing St. John's and Georgetown and Villanova and all sports.
Yeah,
and they're going to do the best they can in football. That's basically they're going to be playing. They're going to be getting a check to play Clemson. They're going to have to go out and do that some. And then they're going to have to fill games with some of the other independents. BYU's an independent. They'll play them, I'm sure, a lot. Army, things like that, and do the best they can. But I didn't like the path they were on. I think this is a better path.
They seem to have taken the harsh lesson that a school like Rutgers also took, where they had a blip where it looked like they were going to be a competitive program.
The only difference is Rutgers is horrible in football.
Yeah.
But they do get Big Ten money.
Right.
Which is up there with the SEC. They get a check every year from being in the Big Ten. UConn was getting, the cost of being in the American Conference with no real official TV contract per se. Nothing like the Big Ten and SEC was not worth it. At least Rutgers can, Rutgers like Vanderbilt can say we're getting that big check from the SEC and the NCAA tournament because all of our other schools are in it. UConn wasn't really getting that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is in that American Conference is the way it's kind of panned out. The teams down south are really dominating the conference. I mean, you got Central Florida, you got South Florida, I think it is, Houston. They're really kind of dominating the conference in such a way that and look, truth be told, football in the Northeast is just not the best these days. And basketball is probably the way to go for any school that's in the Northeast.
Unless you're in the Big Ten.
Unless you're in the Big Ten. I mean, and so it's probably the right move for them. Actually, it is the right move for them because, as
I don't
you
have
said,
any doubt.
Yeah, it gets them back to what they do best, which is basketball, and it gets them focused on what they do best in terms of chasing these.
And regional rivalries.
Yeah, and regional rivalries.
That's correct.
Lewis Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back. John, it's the high school dead period, and I think what that means for most people who either coach or are involved in sports or have children in sports that are in the high school age range, it's time to take a vacation, and that's what we used to always do. We'd, of course, end up heading down to Mississippi and that kind of thing because that's where our family was. But whenever you were coaching and you were just absolutely tied to this schedule, what was your favorite place to go for a vacation?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, also, was it kind of tied to just the fact that you just wanted to be off the radar? Totally?
Off the radar, yeah. I mean, you can play golf if you like golf, every day. Just you're not burdened with the stress of worrying about what you're doing next, and that kind of stress relief is fun. Las Vegas is fun. Going to various baseball venues is fun. I always go to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine that goes to Cincinnati, Cleveland, both Chicago, White Sox, Cubs, and they like to make that little journey during the trip. Other people like to go out on the lake and fish and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a fact of just you don't have to you're not burdened with worrying about who's mad at who or what you're not very good at. And now, I think the football coaches have a little bit different deal because they know as soon as they get back, they start.
Yeah,
they got to get right on. That's exactly right. Yeah. But basketball and things like that, this should be a huge stress-free time for them.
Mm-hmm. Did you, getting off the radar kind of question, and you mentioned the fall sports, but I mean, I guess it is better for if you're baseball, softball, your spring or winter sports, because if you're fall sports, you're actually kind of having to focus on what's about to happen.
Volleyball, that's correct. They as soon as they get back, as soon as the dead period ends, they're starting practice for football, basketball, and football, soccer, and volleyball are the three big ones.
Now, here's a question for you: do you think the dead period should be longer than 2 weeks?
Every coach will tell you yes.
Off the record,
every coach that's coached more than 5 years, will say 3 weeks would be perfect.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's back to the fall thing. I mean, if you are a fall sports coach, that first week you might be able to do something, but you really don't have 2 weeks. You really only have 1 week off if you're the coach. Now, your players may not, and
your players are free.
Yeah,
that's correct.
But I mean,
planning and things like that, just the organization, the planning, and so forth. It's on your mind, to say the least.
Well, and with the way that the schedules work out now, because it's year-round based on, if the principals will allow that to happen. I mean,
which all of them do.
Yeah. I mean, then you're really, if you're a fall sports coach, you're doing something right up to the dead period. And used to, you probably took June off if you were a fall sports coach because your players weren't going to be around, or they'd be doing another sport or whatever.
Or they'd be working.
Right. So you didn't have, you probably got most of June off as well, so the dead period was just kind of added on, but that's not the case anymore.
No, it's unfortunately it's not the case, and the stress and the workload has increased, and the pay is not.
Right.
The pay is not changed.
Yeah.
That's
that stipend's the same as it's been for 20 years.
Schools have figured out too that they don't have to really, because most people coach because they want to coach.
Yeah,
they like it. So there's not that that draw for, man, I need to.
I didn't really thought about this, but there's another word for a lot of high school coaches.
What's that?
Sucker.
Yes. Yeah. $2,000 or $3,000 to be an assistant year round. I don't know. And it used to be you're as assistant at $3,000 it made sense because it was for 3 months.
Yeah. That's right.
I mean, it really did. It was for 3 months during that season, or whatever that season was, whether it's baseball or softball or a football season. It was a 3 months, so you was an assistant for $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah,
it made sense. It really doesn't make sense to put that much time into it for 11 months.
I do wonder at what point in time this kind of rolls back the other way, where enough coaches, where schools have a hard enough time finding coaches that they can trust.
That's the key.
And they start kind of biting back on this and saying, we really need to calm down this year-round cycle. We need to do something with this.
Boy, I'd love to see the time.
Yeah, but they're also the catch-22 of so many, AAU sports, travel teams. Now, football isn't as much affected by this
because they can't. It's really have a travel football unless it's 7-on-7.
Yeah, which is just hadn't really gotten kicked off yet. But most other sports have some sort of off-season time, and then those coaches, if they lose contact with those players, they're running the risk of losing the players.
Yeah, because oftentimes your AAU coaches are now high school coaches.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of
I'm not even going to say recruiting other players.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of an unfortunate circumstance that I think high school athletics finds itself in at the moment.
I agree.
I don't know what the answer is, but it is an unfortunate circumstance, and I don't think it's good for high school sports.
I do not.
Long term.
I agree.
Lewis Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
This is WCDS Glasgow, ESPN Radio 1230, your total sports leader.